name is Preetee Hylton. I am a dental nurse, registered dental nurse. I qualified back in 2010. Um, I currently work in a private practice, number 8 partnership in Chelsea, London. I also teach as a dental nursing tutor with the Dental Nursing Academy. I am a member of the BADN, of course. And I sometimes I act as an examiner for the NEBDN. And the reason I am very passionate about talking about domestic abuse is because I am a survivor myself. And I feel that it's very important that dental professionals are aware of know how to recognize the signs of domestic abuse in patients or in their colleagues, because I want victims of domestic abuse to get the help that I didn't get from my employers back quite a few years ago. So today we will cover so the aims of the session are, again, to help dental professionals in understanding the various types of abuse that occur, recognizing the different types of abuse, and how to provide support to patients and members of staff who are actually experiencing domestic abuse, and encouraging dental organizations to create and implement a domestic abuse policy. May I ask you, those who are in clinic, those who are working, do you actually have a domestic abuse policy at work?
Yes.
Yes, well, that's really
Yeah.
good. In my practice, we've got a safeguarding policy, but we haven't got a specific one for domestic abuse, and we're trying to create one for the practice and implement it with the help of my practice manager and the partners, the owners of the practice. I have also joined the EIDA, which is the Employers Initiative on Domestic Abuse, and they've got loads of resources which I will be sharing with you during this presentation as well. So learning outcomes, at the end of this, you will understand the various types of domestic abuse, recognize the possible signs of domestic abuse, and you will learn how to work together as a team, because it's not just you all work within a team to create a safe space in your workplace, and actually grasp the importance of the EIDA. So if you haven't joined the EIDA, please go onto their website and you will be able to join as an organization, and you will get a little badge that you will be able to display on your website or on social media. So I would like to start the presentation with this quote. So always remember that you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think, and twice as beautiful as you'd ever imagined. Also, I would like to say that this presentation may be triggering to those who may have experienced or who are experiencing domestic abuse. So if you need to leave at any point, we will understand it. It's perfectly fine. Or if you wish to get in touch with me to speak about your experience, I am here to listen to you as well. So the next slide we've all heard about. It is the Depp versus Heard domestic abuse trial. Has everyone read about this? Yes. It was covered on social media. It was in the news. So we heard all about physical abuse, sexual assault. I believe one of the things, like sexual abuse with a foreign object, manipulation, controlling behavior. That was quite clear in both parties. Lots of verbal abuse. gaslighting, financial abuse as well. But can anyone tell me, what do you understand by the term domestic abuse? Anyone? Feel free to unmute yourselves.
I suppose, quite simply, abuse in the home, but you know, it by someone that you live with.
Yes. Thank you, Jackie. So, what is domestic abuse? The formal, the official definition is like, it is any incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive, or threatening behavior, violence, or abuse between those aged 16 or over who are and who have been intimate partners or family members, regardless of gender, sexuality. This can encompass, but is not limited to, the following types of abuse: so psychological, physical, sexual, financial, emotional. And the thing is, it's not just between intimate partners. Domestic abuse could be from parents, from children, from grandparents, from relatives, in-laws. This is all domestic abuse. And we carry on. It's quite a long definition. So when we talk about controlling behavior, this is a range of acts designed to make a person subordinate or dependent by isolating them from sources of support, exploiting their resources or capacities for personal gain, depriving them of the means needed for independence, resistance, and escape, and actually regulating their everyday behavior. Part of it is also coercive behavior, which is an act or a pattern of acts of assault, threats, humiliation, and intimidation, or other abuse that is used to harm, punish, or frighten their victim. Okay, so when we speak of domestic abuse, this also includes honor-based violence, which is quite rampant in certain communities. We will also speak of FGM, which is female genital mutilation, and forced marriage as well. Okay, so let's have a look at the statistics. You get 1 in 4 women and 1 in 67 men suffer from domestic abuse. And there are about 2.3 million adults aged from 16 to 74 who have experienced domestic abuse in England and Wales in 2019 to 2020. So this research was actually carried out by the Office for National Statistics. And the number of police recorded domestic abuse related crimes in England and Wales actually rose by 6% in the year ending March 2021. This was, the number was about 845,734. And this actually follows increases that have been seen in previous years. And it actually reflects improved recording by the police alongside increased reporting by victims, because there has been a lot of organizations raising awareness about the impacts of domestic abuse as well. So I think, or I believe that victims are much more open about sharing their experience and actually about going to the police to get help. I know of a lady, she works with Safe Lives, and she actually trains police officers on how to recognize the signs of domestic abuse, which is really helpful because now we have more people reporting these cases. There was a 22% increase in people contacting the National Domestic Abuse Helpline In England, it's not necessarily indicative of an increase in the number of victims, but perhaps an increase in the severity of abuse being experienced, and maybe a lack of coping mechanisms as well. Remember, we went through the pandemic. A lot of people were on furlough, they were at home, and some people were actually trapped with their abuser. They had nowhere to go. And the severity of abuse that takes place in those times is quite significant. So I don't know if you have family or friends um sorry, if you have family and friends in the country, but I'm not from here, so my immediate family is all the way in Mauritius. So, but I was very fortunate that I had people checking on me. But as we mentioned before, it's all about controlling behavior. It's about isolation. So there were people who were actually stuck at home with no support network whatsoever. So they must have been quite desperate, not being able to cope and being in immediate danger. Therefore, this increase in people actually contacting the National Domestic Abuse Helpline in England. When we speak of domestic abuse, we must consider children in these relationships, in these situations as well. And there was approximately 7% of children who are aged 10 to 15 who lived with an adult experiencing domestic abuse between March 2017 and 2019. Um, Children who actually witness domestic abuse are themselves victims of domestic abuse because it's considered emotional abuse as well. Children should be growing up in a safe environment, isn't it? They should be in a home that is full of love and care, but it doesn't happen to everyone. I was in a relationship, there were children in that relationship, and they did witness a lot of abuse, and there is a lot of trauma that they absorb as well from witnessing verbal abuse, perhaps mostly physical abuse. And it's really important that us as dental professionals, like, we get to know our patients, we get to know them not just as our patients, but they're people, they're individuals, have a chat with them. That is why communication is very important, even with children who come to visit us in a dental practice. It's all right to have a chat with the parents, but in my surgery, for example, we always make it a point to have a direct conversation with the child, to try to see how they're getting on, are they fine? And we build a relationship with our patients, with these children. So it's very important that we actually try to recognize if there are any possible signs of abuse that is happening. As dental nurses, we've got a reputation to say that, it's all we do, we just clean, but that's not the case. We play an important role in safeguarding our patients in terms as children, vulnerable adults, and teenagers as well, who are quite vulnerable at that age. When it comes to the number of cases being discussed per 10,000 adult females at MARAX, which is a multi-agency risk assessment conference, that rose to 46 compared with 43 in the previous year as well. So when you have a domestic abuse case, you will not be dealing only with the police. There will be other agencies that will be involved. So if you've got children, so the school will be involved. You'll have the support of you'll have victim support. They often help they are associated with the police, which is what happened to me as well. There will be other safeguarding organizations that will be involved, and you will have to attend meetings as a survivor or as a victim, trying to sort out, and they will make sure that you are safe as a victim as well. So now we shall move on to possible signs of domestic abuse that will assist us. So this is regarding both patients and our colleagues, or even relatives. If you notice someone who's withdrawn or is isolated from family and friends, and what you've got to look out for, if that person, are they not socializing anymore, especially if you used to go out, socializing more, and they've stopped doing that all of a sudden. They don't talk to you anymore as much, especially regarding their personal relationship, perhaps. Friends and family, they they are not engaging with them as much before. This is because in my case, it was more the abuser was telling me that my friends and family were not good enough. It's really strange. Or he was telling me that I wasn't good enough for them. I was being told like my family or my friends, they looked down on me. And one other thing was when I was trying to get support from family and friends, the abuser did threaten to harm them. And I was quite alone at that time. I didn't have anyone. I was quite new in the country as well. So it was quite easy for him to isolate me. So again, if ever you've known someone for a really long time, and if they're quite withdrawn, they're not talking to you anymore, if you notice any changes in behavior, please ask a question. Are you okay? What's happening? Um, um, Try not to push it, but because at times, if you push it too much, they will sort of withdraw, which is what I did as well. But always ask the question. Another obvious sign of domestic abuse, these are signs of bruises, burns, or bite marks. Bruises, particularly indicative of abuse, especially that could be in infants or children, in everyone really. If they've got broken or fractured bones or evidence of all fractures. Sometimes we have patients who come in, they tell us they've broken perhaps an arm or a limb, and we always ask the question, how did this happen? And then they tell us. And what I tend to do is that I make notes of what has happened or what the patient is telling us, and this should actually be part of the dental records. Anything that the patient has been telling you in terms of safeguarding, if they've fallen down, they've got bruises, they've got marks on them, and you ask them, how did this happen? You have to actually note it down in the patient's file. Another indication would be burns or scalds, or particularly to the feet. You may see lacerations to the body or the mouth. So we're dealing with the mouth. So it's very, especially when your clinician is carrying out soft tissue, hard tissue assessments, if they notice any bruising, any lesions, any lacerations, that has to be noted down as well. There might be bite marks or scarring. If you see toddlers as well, they might have a head injury, they might be feeling unwell. You might notice swelling, bruising, they might be extremely drowsy as well. So Another one would be when children come in, and if you've noticed any bruising or any burns or any bite marks, and they seem very frightened of their parents, you need to raise an alarm there. Okay, so if you observe your patients as well, and they're accompanied by someone else, but we're not just talking about children, it could be a spouse, it could be a parent, any guardian, and if they display sort of frozen watchfulness, or they seem reluctant to go home after the appointment, these are a few signs that you need to look out for. Another type of abuse would be financial or economic abuse. So economic abuse can take many forms. An abuser might do any of the following. So sabotage your income and access to money. They might prevent the victim from being in education or employment. They might limit the victim's working hours. They might take their pay. So again, listen to your colleagues, listen to your patients. Active listening is essential in these cases. They might refuse to let the victim have access to a bank account. They might also restrict how the person uses their money and the things that they own. They tend to control how and when money is spent. They dictate what you can buy for yourself. They check your receipts at all times. They can make you keep a spending diary. They can make you justify every single purchase that you've actually made. They can control the use of property, mobile phone, car. They can also insist, and I can say this, like this has happened to me, where the abuser actually controlled everything. We were renting a place at the time, and my name wasn't on the contract. We had separate bank accounts, but when we got together, he wanted to add his name to my bank account so he could have access to my income, but I never had any access to his bank account. Um, he gave me gifts. He gave me a phone, but one day when it got really bad, on the day that I left, he actually took the phone away from me. So he took it. He had taken away the laptop, and he had actually ripped the landline off the wall so that I couldn't call anyone for help. Um, he 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 actually used to use only the money in my account for shopping, so I wouldn't be left with anything. Even when all everything was in his name, all the bills. Um, and when we separated as well, he came to ask me for money to buy a car. Um, it was quite helpful when we separated. I had to go to the bank to actually say I cannot. Um, this person has to be removed from my account, and I think they told me that the person had to be there to sign paperwork. But if at any point someone who's going through domestic abuse, you need to disclose this to your bank, especially if you have a joint account, and then they won't need the other person to sign any paperwork to remove them off the account. When it comes to financial abuse, sometimes people tend to build up debt in the victim's name as well. They, as I said, they misuse the money in joint bank account. So again, if you have, friends, patients, colleagues who are discussing their finances with you, which we tend to do, we're sitting in the staff room and we talk about things. So do listen out for any type, or if they say, you know, that their partner's just using their money, they don't let them buy things, just keep an eye on them. The other sign would be the person not being allowed to leave the house to go to work, to school, or even shopping unsupervised. I was talking about this with my current dentist. We're very open about it. We talk a lot about, you know, signs of domestic abuse. And it was quite interesting because back then, the abuser used to drive me everywhere. So I didn't have much knowledge of public transport, if you can believe that. So I didn't see it as a way of him controlling me. I saw it as caring. It was only after I left that I realized, well, I couldn't really find my way around London. I had to learn it all by myself, to navigate the city. But it's just that. So you have to differentiate where someone is actually has your best interest at heart. Are they being super caring, or are they being controlling? In my case, they were being controlling. I just didn't realize it. Okay, so I wasn't um I he used to go out all the time, you know, being with friends. I don't know where I would go, but whenever I went out, I used to be questioned, or there was always some sort of excuse that was being made that I couldn't go out, so I couldn't go to gatherings, or meeting up with friends, or even if I was allowed to go out, um, he would question me where I'd been, um, how long, when would I be coming back home, etc. Another thing would be social media use. We're all on social media nowadays, and that can be used in a variety of ways to monitor, stalk, and harass and impersonate victims. For example, there is software out there that is available that can be installed on a victim's phone or smart home devices that can be used to record their location and conversations. It's terrifying. There was this survey that was actually carried out by Women's Aid that 81% of domestic abuse service providers said they had experienced an increased demand for telephone support during COVID as well. If you go on certain um domestic abuse service providers, like there is a screen that shows up that you can actually reminds you that you must delete your social media or your web browser history as well, because if you are being monitored, if the abuser sees that the victim is trying to seek help, um the abuse can actually escalate, because they don't want their their victim to escape. It's all about control. So at any point, and I should have said this, if an abuser realizes that the victim has actually recognized the signs of abuse and is seeking help and is seeking to leave, this is a very dangerous situation to be in, because abusers tend to think this way: if I can't have you, no one else can. Okay, so there are other methods that they can use to keep them with you. They they belittle their victims a lot. So um I got like I was fat and lazy. Um, I was ugly. I wasn't pretty enough, and he used to praise other women, saying how they looked attractive. Um, I he has a degree in architecture, and you know me, I was just training as a dental nurse, so I was constantly told that you know, I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't earning enough. Um, And there were loads of comments that made me feel that really I wasn't good enough. Sometimes as a victim of domestic abuse, you question your your existence. So, it's if someone confides in you and says that, "Do you know what? Um, my other half, he talks to me like this." You have to let them know that this is abuse, you know. Um, so there is another thing that I would like to talk about you. It's about gaslighting. I am sure all of you have heard this term before because it has been on the news quite a lot recently. So this term, gaslighting term, comes from a stage play called Gaslight. It was in 1938, and this play showed a husband trying to drive his wife crazy by dimming the lights, which were powered by gas at that stage, in their home. And then he denies that the lights had changed when his wife points it out. So he was doing it, but when his wife pointed it out, he was like, "No, well, I didn't do it." It is an extremely effective form of emotional abuse that causes a victim to question their own feelings, their instincts, and sanity. And this actually gives the abusive partner a lot of power. Um, and we know that abuse is all about power and control. And I will say this: once an abusive partner has broken down the victim's ability to trust their own perception, the victim is much more likely to stay in the abusive relationship because they no longer trust their own reality. They don't know what is going on, and they become very dependent on their abuser. So, there was one time, this is my own experience. Um, my abuser had hit me, so I had bruises on my hands, arms, lips. Um, and then he'd gone out. He went back to work on that day. Um, and I remember I had called 999 and I had hung up because I didn't know what to do. I had children with him, and he came back home and he told me he didn't. He asked me how did I get these bruises. He doesn't remember. He didn't remember doing anything, and I questioned it then because, I did question myself, but, it did happen. But these are the sort of tactics an abuser will use to actually control. They will cause the victim themselves not to trust what has truly happened. Um, so there is this author and psychoanalyst Robin Stern, if you'd like to look him up. Um, he wrote about gaslighting, and the signs of being a victim of gaslighting actually include second guessing yourself, asking yourself, like, am I too sensitive, multiple times a day? Because sometimes we do get sensitive, don't we? But constantly questioning yourself, am I too emotional? Am I too sensitive? We victims tend to feel confused and even crazy, which I had felt for years. Um, Someone who apologizes a lot, whether it's at work or whether it's to your partner. Victims tend not to understand why, with so many apparently good things, why we aren't happy. So I did that. I always wondered, why wasn't I happy? This person loved me. Um, I used to withhold information from friends and family. My mum, my parents didn't know. I wouldn't tell them. Um, and I knew something was wrong, you know, but then domestic abuse comes in a cycle. You know, they will abuse you, they will apologize, and then everything will be okay for maybe a month or two, and then they'll go back to the same thing. So you feel like, well, maybe I did something wrong, maybe that's why they're hitting me. So I used to lie, you know, a lot, even when I had bruises. I was a trainee dental nurse then. Um, I went to work. I told you I had bruises on my arm, and the dentist then, he was nice. He did ask, and I was like, oh no, I fell in the bathroom. So at any point, if you notice any bruising, please make sure you actually ask what has happened and make a note of it. So, um, you know, if you have anyone telling you, you know, they're constantly wondering whether they're a good enough partner, do ask them, why do they think that? What's happening at home? Again, it's all about building relationships and maintaining them. And you never know, you might be saving that person's life. Also, when it comes to intimate relationships, it's about being pressured into sex or sexual contact. So, yes, sexual abuse. This actually involves the perpetrator sexually assaulting or raping a victim. Again, it is a form of control. It's about exposing, humiliating, and degrading victims by forcing them into having sex. This is a combination also of social media. Sometimes perpetrators, they film their victims, they take pictures, they show it to others. This is actually a crime now. So uh, perpetrators do get convicted for it. Um, and if a pregnancy occurs due to rape, you know, the perpetrator might coerce them into having an abortion. But what exactly is sexual assault? It is when someone intentionally grabs you or touches you in a sexual way that you don't like, um, or you're forced to kiss someone or do something else sexual that is against your will. That is sexual assault. It's all about consent. Okay, so it makes no difference whether you're in clothes or not. Anyone can be sexually assaulted, and anyone can commit sexual rape. So when it comes to rape, the definition is when someone forces you to have penetrative sex or has sex with you without your consent or agreement. Um, if this has happened to you, or if someone discloses to you that they have been raped, they have been sexually assaulted, um, it is a serious offence, and it has to be reported to the police. Okay. There is another thing when it comes to rape is stealthing. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it is the intentional removal of a condom during penetrative sex without the person's knowledge. So that is considered rape as well, and it has to be reported to the police. Um, in When I was a lot younger, I used to believe that the naive me used to believe that rape cannot happen when you're in a relationship, that the other person had the right to do whatever they wanted with you. And obviously now I don't believe that. But even though you are in a couple, you are in a relationship, if you don't give consent to have sex, you know, that is rape. So please do make note of that. Sorry, I've got. Oh, thank you very much, everyone. I just saw the chat. That is very kind of you. Thank you. So also I would like to point out, if you're under the influence of alcohol as well, or drugs, and you don't understand what was happening, or you were asleep and someone has penetrative sex with you, that is actually rape. And you are allowed to change your mind at first. So sometimes, even if you wanted to have sex, but you want to stop and you say no, and the person carries on, that is classified as rape as well. Um, so we will, I do understand this can be quite hard to listen to. So let's move on to actually some safeguarding in dentistry. Is everyone still with me? Are we doing okay? If you have any questions, feel free to put in the chat and we will try to answer that at the end.
Can I just add something, Preetee?
Yes.
Up until, I'm not quite sure when the law was changed.
Yeah.
It's probably within the last 20 years, but certainly up until that point, if you were married to somebody,
Yeah.
even if you were separated, there was no such thing in British law as marital rape. And that has been changed in the last, probably within the last 20 years.
Yes.
But certainly up until that point, if you were married, even if you were separated, even if you were not willing, your husband could not be convicted of rape if he'd forced you to have sex. That has now changed. And that's one of the changes that has happened over the last probably 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
But a lot of people still think, as you did, that if you are certainly married, that concept does not exist, but it does now exist.
It does now. And I think we should, Pam, let people know, because as I said, even I didn't know that there was such a thing as marital rape back then. But and I'm delighted that, there have been changes that have been made, that, people who actually rape their partners or their significant others, wives, husbands, they can be convicted for it. So thank you. Right, let us move on to safeguarding in dentistry. So according to the NHS England definition, safeguarding means protecting a citizen's health, well-being and human rights, enabling them to live free from harm, abuse and neglect. And it is an integral part of providing high-quality healthcare. So it's about safeguarding children, young people and adults, and it is a collective responsibility. We work in dentistry. It is a part of healthcare. And those most in need of protection are children, young people, adults who are at risk, such as those receiving care in their own home, people with physical, sensory, and mental impairments, and those with learning disabilities. So all members of staff, whether we work in a hospital setting or a care home in general practice, or in a dental practice, and whether we're employed by public sector or the private sector, we have a responsibility to actually safeguard children and adults who are at risk of abuse and neglect. When it comes to us dental professionals, we have to have training in safeguarding. So there are different levels in safeguarding. Safeguarding level 1, which is for non-clinical team members such as receptionists, administrators. I am not sure if you're working in a dental practice, but in my practice, none of our receptionists are actually dental nurses. But in my previous practice where I used to work, all the receptionists were all dental nurses. We used to cover for each other. So we always used to have at least level 2 safeguarding training. So that is for dentists, for dental care professionals. And I would advise, like, whether your admin team they are dental nurses, they're qualified dental nurses or not, but I think they should have safeguarding level 2, so for the whole clinical team. Safeguarding level 3 for clinical team members such as pediatric dentists and dental care professionals, or if they are a designated safeguarding lead in a practice. So I have training for level 3 because I am I am safeguarding lead at my practice. So when it comes to protecting our colleagues, or for employers creating a policy on how to support their members of staff who are experiencing domestic abuse, I have mentioned them previously. They are it's the Employers Initiative on Domestic Abuse. So again, if you would like to look this up. So what is the EIDA? So they it's a growing network of employers. They come from a variety of sectors, so it's not just dental and medical. They work collectively to take action on domestic abuse, so they're continuously gathering information, collating data, and actually learning from them. So if you are part of an organization, they assist employers in providing better care for their employees by implementing effective internal policies on domestic abuse, and they offer easily accessible practical support and tools. They tend to hold meetings, I believe, about 3 to 4 times a year, and they've got loads of resources on domestic abuse and how to raise awareness. They've also got a domestic abuse toolkit. So if, again, you don't have any resources on domestic abuse awareness for your organization, for your workplace, this will help you kickstart it. So whether, you work in a private company, it's public, or it's a charity sector, it doesn't matter how big or small it is. This will help you with creating and implementing domestic abuse policy. Okay, they've also got a handbook. It's exclusively available to EIDA members. Again, membership is free, so why wouldn't you register? So this is written for both new members at the beginning of their journey. So if you're just registering, if you register today with them, you will have access to it, and it provides practical guidance. It's continuously being updated. It has examples of measures that you can action quickly. It has models of domestic abuse policies. It has some legal advice that is available there, or and how you as an employer can support and can guide your members of staff towards getting legal advice. It has voices of survivors and business members who have shared their own experience of what has worked and why when it comes to implementing a domestic abuse policy. And it's designed to work as a single reference guide. So there are other organizations who have contributed to creating this. So when it comes to creating a policy, you can actually access Sharon's policy, which is a template that you can use in your own organization, and you can actually implement it in your practice or wherever you're working. So Sharon is a lovely lady. She created these guidance notes because of she was a domestic abuse victim and a survivor. It was about how her perpetrator was lying in wait for her in a car with a knife and was trying to abduct her. She has survived it, and she is doing amazing work when it comes to raising awareness about domestic abuse. So when it comes to supporting your colleagues who have been brave enough to disclose that they are experiencing domestic abuse, it's very important to listen without judging. Okay, listen and take care not to blame them. When I was a trainee dental nurse, I had one of my classmates tell me that I probably did something because, I must have provoked him, and she even told me I probably deserved it. So, if someone tells you, they are being abused, do listen. Do acknowledge that it does take a lot of strength to talk to someone else when they're experiencing domestic abuse. And it's quite sad that it is the victim that usually feels the shame. I remember I was ashamed of it. I was ashamed that, I wasn't loved, that I was being abused. I had bruises. Um, and it's still funny, like even now when I think about it, it's incredible that I felt shame and not the abuser. They thought they were doing the right thing. Okay, and always give that person time to talk. Don't rush them and don't push them. If they don't want to, do not push them. But understand this, if you think, or even if you get a gut feeling that they might be in immediate danger, you've got to call 999. Okay, so it's all about trying to assess the situation. Do try to be comforting and tell them that nobody deserves to be threatened or beaten, because the abuser must have told them, they do deserve it. And if they've come to you, yes, you are listening to them, but try to be a source of comfort to them as well. Do support them as a friend. Do encourage them to express their feelings and allow them to make their own decisions. Do not tell them to leave the relationship if they're not ready. It takes a lot to be able to leave a relationship, an abusive relationship. It took me, the abuser, telling me, do not let these children see you bleed on the floor, for me to be able to leave, because I thought I was going to die there. So it takes a lot because it had been going on for years. This is a person who threw me out in winter, in the cold, in the snow, with a baby in my arms. So, once an abuser starts, it went on for years, and it took a lot for me to be able to leave. So if someone again confides in you, do ask them if they've been hurt, if they have suffered from physical harm, and if you can accompany them to the hospital or to go them to the GP, please do so. Help them report the assault to the police if they choose to. Be ready to provide information on organizations. This is why I was telling you about, joining the EIDA. You will have a list of domestic abuse support organizations that you will have for yourself and that you can provide to others should they need it. If you are worried that a friend or neighbor or loved one or colleague is a victim of domestic abuse, you can actually call the National Domestic Abuse Helpline for free, and it's confidential. It's open 24 hours a day. But again, if you believe that the person who confided in you is in danger, please call 999. And you might take it personally, but do not in any instance confront or engage with the abuser, because you will be putting the victim in serious danger. When it comes to suggestions for management in a dental practice, if you are a practice manager, you're a practice owner, or maybe you're a team lead, offer the option of flexible working if you can, for medical appointments, for therapy sessions. I went through a lot of therapy after the abuse I went through, for relocation purposes. I was actually officially homeless for a while because I didn't have a home to go to. I was placed in temporary accommodation. So especially if they have small children, my employer then didn't understand that I was just made practice manager as well, so I had a lot of responsibilities. There are times I had to take my small children to work, and you know, I didn't have a choice. I needed money. I didn't have a place to stay. I was homeless. I needed to feed my children. So, you know, it was really hard. So also with consent from the victim, inform other members of staff to not disclose any information regarding the victim via any communication pathway. This is why we have GDPR. Please do not disclose any information regarding any patients. Even at my workplace, we've been discussing this. Sometimes, you know, you've got someone in the chair and, you know, their other half calls and say, oh, you know, is she there? You shouldn't be disclosing. You must not, under any circumstances, disclose this information to anyone. With consent from the victim, again, circulate a photo of the perpetrator so that security police can be alerted if the abuser shows up at the workplace. Also, if you have given them time away to deal with, to go for medical appointments, therapy sessions, and relocation purposes. If you as a manager can't do anything, please refer this to your safeguarding lead. Ask the victim to keep in touch during time of work for their own safety. Check in with them. It's really important. I remember I've got my partner, and he's got a little one. I remember when we first moved in together last year, actually we celebrated 1 year anniversary. And when, you know, he's quite lively, and he had actually hit my arm with his foot, and he was playing on the bed, and he was bouncing around. And I had this massive bruise on my arm, and I thought, oh my God, this looks terrible. I did go to work, and John, who's my dentist, he just looked at it and he asked me, what is this? In that tone. And I explained to him what had happened, and he knows my history as well. And what he did, and I really appreciated it, is that he took a picture of it, of the bruise on my arm, and it has been kept on a file, you know, just in case, because you never know. So that really matters. So if you notice bruises on your colleagues, please ask them what has happened. Be very open. I know it's still a subject that people are not keen, they're not comfortable talking about, but please have these open discussions with your colleagues at work during staff meetings, because, you know, you never know. Again, you might save a life. What we did, I think I've shared this with Pam already. I carried out this survey. It was quite a basic survey. I shared it on social media. Pam, again, the BADN, were very kind to actually share it with the members, I believe, and on social media. And it was quite sad when I read the responses. So we had like, have you experienced domestic abuse? Like, that was one of the questions, and we had 19 people, you know, answered, like a total of 40 people answered, but we had like 47.5% who said yes, and no, there were 52.5%. And the question that hit me the most is like, if yes, so if you did suffer from domestic abuse, did you receive any support from your workplace? And it was 100% no. And this was carried out, you know, dentists, dental hygienists, dental nurses, dental therapists, and it was just shocking to know that, you know, no one received any support from their workplaces. And the next few slides, again, this might be a lot to take in, but I would love to share it with you, because these are responses, a few, they're anonymous, so you don't know who's written them. So the first thing is, the domestic abuse ended as I started my career as a dental nurse is 2019, so ensure support was needed. I didn't tell my colleagues about my experience. It's very important that we create a safe space in our workplaces. Complete privacy of what days are worked for. This is what domestic abuse survivors and victims want from their workplaces. For all team members to be trained and have a deeper understanding of how domestic violence can impact an individual. Yes, I know it's hard for people to know how to behave, but for those of us that are at the other side of it now, we could train others to know what may or may not be helpful with colleagues going through domestic abuse. And this is why we're doing this. We're trying to raise awareness about how it impacts everyone, what help, how can we provide support to others, and is it a safe enough environment for us to confide in our colleagues? This is what we're trying to create, a non-judgmental, safe environment. Yes, this is what, again, another DCP wants someone recognizing the signs, change of behavior, checking in and creating a safe space to talk and explain what is going on behind closed doors. There are other responses, and again, this person would like advice about how to seek legal support and therapy in order to get myself out of the situation. Those who don't go through it have no idea how it feels to be abused financially and psychologically, just because there's no physical evidence and I make it to work every day, and that too with a happy temperament. Does not mean when I leave work at 5:30 p.m. it's all good. I look forward to being at work. I dread going home. I feel trapped when I sought help. It was very difficult. The police did nothing. They gave me numbers to call. Of the various numbers I called, only one was of any help. I'm unable to get a GP appointment because they're fully booked. I've had to fork out £240 a month for the last 2 months to speak to a therapist. £240 a month. It might not be a lot for some people, but when it comes to dental nurses, I can tell you that £240 is a lot of money. So there should be more clearer pathways and immediate free support available. This is coming from the dental community. This is what they want. Access to leave and flexible working hours, very important. Paid time off. Someone wanted paid time off and they had severe broken wrist and bruising. Again, that's the last one. Someone recognizing signs of abuse, changes of behavior, checking in and creating a space, safe space to talk or explain what was going on behind closed doors. Considerations for work, stress, well-being and support, safe space and support. Again, because others don't know about the impacts of domestic abuse, because domestic abuse victims and survivors tend to be extremely vulnerable. They cannot think right. They need support from friends, family, colleagues, workplaces. Okay, so again, it's about employers understanding why coming to work was hard, why the lack of sleep made me not so great at my job, helping me solve issues. I was only 17 at the time. Again, safeguarding leads, practice managers. It's very important that, we create a safe space, but also we have a specific pathway or that we can share with our colleagues or with our members of staff so that they can follow, so that they can get help. So signposting is extremely important. In the next slide, I have included just a few so feel free to take a screenshot or a picture of this. And also, if you want to have, I have a list of organizations, domestic abuse support organizations. So if you want them, please feel free to give me a shout at any point and I will send them to you. So again, men can call men's advice line. or visit the web chat on Men's Advice Line. There's Menkind as well. Also, you've got Gallup, which has been a lot more active when it comes to the LGBT plus community. Karma Nirvana, so for forced marriage and honor crimes as well. There's a forced marriage unit that you can call, so feel free again to take a picture of this, and you can actually add this to your safeguarding policy, or if I'm sure you've got a safeguarding folder at work, you can add this to that. Of course, references, I had to do like quite a lot of research for this. So from victim support, the ONS, NHS England was very helpful, Safe Flights, Crown Prosecution Service, and Menkind Initiative. And as we approach the end of this presentation, I really do hope, sorry, I just need to check that. I would like to share. This is one of my favorite quotes, again from J.K. Rowling. And so as I said, I am a domestic abuse survivor, and this happened in 2014. We're now in 2023. And I must say, the reason I'm doing this is because when I was going for domestic abuse, the BADN did support me. They were helpful, especially Pam. I remember I had to attend this meeting, and I did tell Pam what had happened, and she had helped me. So when I met her, was it last year, Pam?
Yeah.
We met last year. So I didn't think that you'd remember me.
Oh, I remember it.
And when I saw you again, I was just so happy. And when you asked me if I could do a talk about it, it was quite hard, and I don't think it gets any easier to talk about it. But especially after I've done talks at dental shows, when I've been approached by other dental professionals who have been victims and who are survivors of domestic abuse, and I realized, do you know what? It's so important for us to talk about it. And probably after this, I will go have a good cry. But it's thank you so much, and I don't think I will ever stop thanking you for helping me at that time. And I've come a long way, from someone who was getting beaten up and was homeless at some point. I think I've been very lucky. And I do want to make a difference when it comes to, raising awareness about domestic abuse, about the impacts, about how, we can help staff members, colleagues, other dental professionals. We're not just talking about dental nurses. Even if you're a dentist, you can experience domestic abuse. So this is why I'm doing this. So thank you very much for giving me this platform to share my experience, and hopefully this has been helpful. And should you need any information about signposting or any other organizations, feel free to contact me. And thank you very much to the BAD.
Thank you very much, Preetee. That was a very very interesting but very emotional presentation. So yeah, thank you very much.